Greetings, and to those of you that are a part of Antioch Central in particular, I'd like to take a few moments and communicate to you about kind of where we are and what our plan of action is going to be here for the next few days, or at least for this weekend. We kind of find ourselves in what on one hand, I guess you could say, are unprecedented times, although I was thinking a little while ago that for those of us that were alive during 9/11, and especially perhaps teenagers and older, no doubt that was an extremely unsettling event, and several days the uncertainty of what was going on, and of course even beyond that, it doesn't take a little bit of reflection on our history, not only of this country but of history in general, to know that people have been through even more challenging and difficult times. And so I'm not taking away from what we're dealing with, but I also think sometimes kind of the proper perspective is very helpful. And so all of that being said, I guess what is most encouraging and reassuring is to remember that while all of this is sort of uncertain and unexpected for us, God knew all of it well in advance, and he knows how it's all going to go. He knows how it's going to unfold, and we can trust him. We can trust him that he is in control of every situation, every circumstance. And I want to remind you, the psalmist tells us that God is an ever-present help in trouble. So we obviously are in some troubling times, but we have the assurance that God is right there with us in these troubling, uncertain times. In fact, the three Hebrew children, and that very well-known story in the Bible, we find out the point at which God was manifested in the situation was when they were in the fire. It wasn't until they were in the fire that the king says, I see a fourth man. And so don't forget that when we are in the middle of our tests, our trials, the circumstances we're in right now, that God is with us. And I want to remind you also of the words of the psalmist in Psalms 23, that he said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death." He didn't say, though I walk around it. He didn't say, though I fly over it. He said that I walk through it. And the assurance that he had was that as he walked through the valley, that the shepherd was with him, comforting him, protecting him, keeping him. And so that's the same assurance that we have. Obviously, we are walking in this right now, but by faith, we are going to walk through it. And we can walk through it without fear because our shepherd is protecting us and keeping us. I remind you, I preached last Sunday morning that we are supposed to live without fear. Perfect love casts out fear. And we have the opportunity to dwell in the secret place of the Most High, a place of protection and safety. But again, that does not mean that we don't go through things, and that doesn't mean that no believer, no Christian is going to get the coronavirus. That's not what the Word of God promises us, and that's as much as I would love to be able to say that. That's not the guarantee. And even if some of us deal with it, we can trust ultimately that God is in control, and that God's purpose and God's plan is what is being accomplished. We don't have to understand it. We definitely don't have to like it, but that does not take away from the fact that God's purpose is being accomplished. So let me just kind of talk to you about what our plan is, particularly for this weekend, for Sunday, March the 15th. And we are not going to make any decisions or proclamations beyond tomorrow. And so for tomorrow, I guess I'll kind of summarize tomorrow what we're going to do, and that also going back to the message last Sunday morning and the analogy that I used. We are supposed to walk by faith. We are supposed to walk with confidence and trust in God. And I absolutely believe that. But we also, I think, should operate with a degree of discretion and wisdom. And so the analogy that again was used is that I get in my car and I have faith that God is going to protect me, but I still put my seatbelt on. And so I guess I'd like to say this weekend that's kind of what we're going to do. We're going to put our seatbelt on, not trying to respond out of fear, out of hype, out of, sort of the chaos that may be going on. We're not governed by fear, but I think we also should be wise in what we do. And someone actually made the point to me as I was trying to seek some guidance from others and get some input as to the direction to go is we might say on one hand that pressing through and doing our normal stuff is a testimony to the world of our faith and confidence. But I think there's a flip side of that we could take into account, and that is an unbeliever could perceive our actions as being very irresponsible. And so we may mean them by faith and confidence, but they may not come across that way. And I think we should consider the idea of not letting our good be evil spoken of. Let me quickly say, we obviously don't make our decisions to please people. And that's not what this is about at all. But I do believe we need to put our seatbelts on this weekend. So that being said, here's the approach we're going to take for tomorrow. For Sunday morning, we will not have a regular church service. We are going to stream a live service beginning at 10 a.m. We will have the worship team participate and lead in worship, and then I will minister and preach whatever it is I feel like the Lord has laid upon my heart. But we are not expecting you to come to the building. We would like for you to join in at home from your computer or iPad or whatever other method you use to participate in a service. And then for tomorrow evening, we are going to be streaming as well. We will not be streaming a service per se like we will do in the morning. In fact, it will more than likely be myself just sharing with you. I actually feel like a couple of days ago, before we knew what was happening and the decisions that have been made, that the Lord had already given me some things. And so I'll be sharing that. We may incorporate some other things in that, but we'll see. But I just want you to know the one thing we will be doing is at 6 p.m. we will be streaming something, and I guess you'll just have to log on and find out what it is that's going to be. I want to encourage you, and really this is based on your level of comfort, and you use the discretion that you feel to use. But if you're willing, if you're comfortable doing it, I would encourage you to try to maybe get together with a few folks in the morning at someone's house, your house, if you're comfortable inviting people, or hopefully maybe in your oikos or amongst some of your friends and those that you are involved with at church. Maybe one of you is willing to open up your home, and so you could get together, several of you, and watch the service in the morning, and perhaps again even tomorrow evening, but especially in the morning. And as we spend some time worshiping and praying, I received an email this morning. President Trump has declared Sunday to be a national day of prayer, and so we will be incorporating in, as a part of what we do, a time of prayer. A time of prayer not for the symptoms, not specifically necessarily for God to stop the coronavirus, because the more important thing is for the root issues that we face to be dealt with. And so that will be our focus, focusing on God doing what He wants to do through all of this for the well-being of us as individuals, as a church, and also as a nation. And so I think that may be a little easier if you're gathered together with a few people. But again, you may not even be comfortable with that, and that's totally understandable. So there's no pressure for you to do that. In fact, my hope is that you feel comfortable to operate at whatever level of peace and faith you have, and not feeling judged by others if you're not comfortable with certain things. Bottom line is you shouldn't, and we shouldn't be governed by fear, but that doesn't mean that we don't conduct ourselves in sort of a wise way. And I also understand that for some, you're a little more prone to the effects of this than others, and so using precaution is encouraged. So that's our plan for tomorrow. We're not making any decisions beyond tomorrow. I've been involved in a couple of conversations over the last several days of, and the question, what if, comes up. What if this gets worse? What if this continues? And the only thing I really find that has come out of that question and the discussion related to that question is sort of more fear and more anxiety. So I don't really know that there's a lot of benefit to us going through all the what ifs right now. We're just going to take it one day at a time. And I think really that's what the Lord taught us to do, not to be ignorant or deny the future. But in fact, let me read to you quickly here. The Living Bible says, Matthew 6:34 this way: "Don't be anxious about tomorrow. God will take care of your tomorrow too. Live one day at a time." Some of the other translations say tomorrow is going to have its own problems, and it will. So there's really no use us trying to figure all of this out right now. We just need to figure out what the Lord wants us to do today, what the next step is. In fact, that's what the psalmist said in Psalms 37:23. "The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord." It is my faith and confidence, not only individually, but as the pastor of Antioch Central, if we can simply find out what the Lord wants us to do with each step, that He's going to lead us and guide us to get us to where we ultimately need to go. And so trying to figure all of that out in advance is really not going to be all that productive. But if we will let Him lead us one day, one step at a time, it's going to work out according to His will and according to His plan. Let me remind you of one other verse as I wrap it up here, and that's Romans 8:28, very familiar verse for many of us. Paul says, "We know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose." And as I was going through Spiritual Growth 1, Living Logos, a couple of days ago, that verse came up, and a perspective on that verse that I've never really thought of before, that really actually helped me to understand some things about that verse I think I've still kind of questioned even after all my years of walking with the Lord. And that is, I think we often kind of, at least subconsciously, think that verse says that we know that everything is good. Everything. And so there's times I've kind of struggled that everything is good. We go through heartache, pain, difficulties. How is that good? But when you really read the verse, that's not what it says. It says that all things, plural, work together for good. So all of the different things, whether the individual thing seems good or bad, is ultimately working for good. And I believe this situation is one of those things. There's a lot about it that it's hard to see it as being good, but God is in control. And so I believe He is going to use all of this for good. And ultimately, I believe that He is going to get Himself glory out of this. And I think one of the common ways He's going to get Himself glory out of this is by the church's response and reaction to all of this, and being the light that we've been called to be. So, thank you for taking time to watch this, listen to it, and we will maintain communication over the next couple of days as we need to, as we come up on more services and more events that are scheduled with how we're going to handle them. We'll be communicating by realm through the church email list, also by the Antioch Central Facebook page. So hopefully you have you're connected to one of those and you can be kept up to date with what is going on. God bless you. I am praying for you and for your family. Ultimately, that God would give you peace and keep His hand upon you as we continue to walk through this situation that we're in. God bless you.